Hello students, in this video we will start with the chapter observing space, and we will also be learning about different types of telescopes and how they were invented. Now if we talk about early days, so man had been always curious about the sun, the moon and the stars which we can see in the night sky. And to observe them more clearly, we have developed various instruments so that we can observe them. So the curiosity of the man has made possible for many things that we can see these days. These days it is even possible to go in the space and observe different types of the heavenly bodies, and we can even study about them through satellites and many other things. So the first person to make the telescope and observe the different heavenly bodies was Galileo Galilei, and he made the first telescope in 1608. And after making the telescope, he realized that there are many more stars than that we could see with our naked eye. And using his telescope, he also discovered the moon, the Jupiter, the black spots of the sun, etc. Now there has been a great leap in the technology, what Galileo had made the telescope and what the telescope we have these days. Now space scientists have built these type of telescope and the researchers have extended. So now we know that a telescope is used to observe the space, but will one telescope be sufficient for us to observe the space completely? So we are going to find out the answers about this, that there are different types of telescopes which are used to study the different parts of the space. Now before learning about the different types of telescopes, let us first understand the different forms of light. Now we know that light is an electromagnetic wave and our eyes are only capable of visible light, that is under 400 nanometers to 800 nanometers. So we use the visible radiation telescope, that is the optical telescopes. So mostly the optical telescopes are used everywhere to study the space, but there are also different other types of telescopes like X-ray, gamma ray, radio telescopes, etc. that we will be studying now. So the first type of telescope that we will study is the optical telescope. Now these telescopes are also called as visible radiation telescopes as they use the visible radiation. Now most of these optical telescopes are made out of two or more lenses. Now why there are more amount of lenses is to collect the maximum amount of light which is coming from the heavenly object. Now these objective lenses, these should be made as large as possible. So there are large objective lenses and there is also a small eyepiece. So using the light which is collected by the objective, a smaller lens which is called as the eyepiece produces a large image of the source, and the light rays change their direction as they enter a lens from the atmosphere. And again when they enter the atmosphere after passing through the lens, this is called as the refraction. So whenever there is refraction which is happening, so these type of telescope can also be called as the refracting telescopes. So you can call it as an optical telescope, which also can be called as visible radiation telescope, and as there is refraction which is happening inside, so these are also called as the refracting telescopes. The next type of telescope is called as the reflecting telescopes. So there is a difference between refracting and reflecting telescope. Now in reflecting telescope, we use a concave mirror and we also use some plane mirrors and an eyepiece. So there are two types of reflecting telescopes, that is the Newtonian telescope and the Cassegrain telescope. Let us now understand the Newtonian telescope. So the Newtonian telescope which is there, it observes the light rays coming from the space, and these rays are reflected by the concave mirror which is present inside the telescope. Now before these reflected rays they converge at the focus, they are deflected again by a small plane mirror. Now as a result, they get focused at a point lying on the perpendicular to the axis of the telescope. They pass through the eyepiece and we get a magnified image of the source. So when you are looking from the eyepiece, the image that you get is much larger and which is much magnified. And this is because inside the reflection is happening. The light passes through the concave mirror, it touches the plane mirror, then again it passes through the concave mirror, and then it is then reflected towards the eyepiece. Now the next type of reflecting telescope is called as Cassegrain telescope. Now in Cassegrain telescope also we use a concave mirror, but here we also use a convex mirror. So instead of a plane mirror, here we are using a convex mirror. So the light rays, after reflecting from the concave mirror, they are reflected back towards the small convex mirror. They pass through a hole at the center of the concave mirror and then through the eyepiece. Now the eyepiece, if you see, it is situated outside the concave mirror. So there is a small tiny hole between the concave mirror from which the light will reflect from the concave to convex and then it will go towards the eyepiece. And from the eyepiece you will get a magnified image of the source, that is of the object that you are seeing. Now this is a telescope with concave mirrors and it is situated at Aryabhat Research Institute of Experimental Sciences, that is in Nainital, and this is the largest optical telescope that we have. So from these telescope we can see the object at a very magnified image of that particular object. Now next type of telescope that we will study is called as the radio telescope. Now in this space there are many heavenly bodies. They emit the radio waves and these waves or the radiations we cannot see with our eyes. Hence there has to be some special type of telescopes to receive these type of rays and these are called as the radio telescopes. So they are made out of one or more dishes and they are usually like a parabolic shape. So as in optical telescope, the incident radio waves are reflected by the dishes and they converge at the focus. So a radio receiver is placed at the focal point. The information is gathered by the receiver and is passed on to a computer. Now this computer will analyze it and will construct the image of the source that we are seeing. So through these type of waves which are coming in, we are actually analyzing the image of what we are going to see. So these are called as the radio telescopes. Now there are also large radio telescopes and these are called as the giant meteor wave radio telescope. So as in the diagram you can see, these have a large dish and these are situated at Narayangaon near Pune. So these are large dishes. Usually it is of 30 dish, the collection of 30 dish, and the dishes will collect the radio waves and then it is amplified through the amplifier and it is given to the computer. The computer will receive whatever the rays are there and it will analyze according to the rays what will be the picture of the object that we are seeing. So this is how the radio telescopes look and it can be giant telescopes. So we learned about refracting telescope, reflecting telescopes and radio telescopes. So these type of telescopes, they uses visible light and radio waves which can easily pass into the earth atmosphere, and these telescopes can be placed on the earth and we can get an image of the heavenly bodies that we want to see. But there can be few problems, as in some cities the sky will not be clear, so the image won't be proper. There can be pollution, so these type of telescopes have to be installed in a place where people don't live, where there is less amount of pollution, so that the images won't get disturbed. So to overcome these type of problems, what scientists have done is that they have made the telescopes and sent those telescopes into the space. So as in the space there will be no problem of pollution or people or any other factor like temperature or any atmospheric issues won't be there in the space. So we can get a bright and a very clear image, and also the telescope will remain at one place. So these type of telescopes which we send into space are called as the space telescopes. And in earlier standard you have also studied about Hubble telescopes, and this telescope was the first telescope that was sent into the space, and after that we have made many type of telescopes and have been sent into the space. So the first image is of an Hubble telescope, which is an example of space telescope. Now this telescope is still working and it has also helped us to find out many discoveries. This was sent in 1990 by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and this is an optical telescope. It has a mirror of around 94 inches and it is orbiting the Earth at a height of 589 kilometers. The second image is of another telescope which is named as Chandra, and it is an X-ray telescope, and this was also sent by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration but in 1999. Now this is an X-ray telescope and it is useful to get the information about stars and galaxies as they emit the X-rays. So these type of rays can be absorbed by these telescope and the images can be obtained. Now this telescope is also named Chandra after the famous Indian scientist, that is Subramaniam Chandrasekhar. Now in India, there is an Indian Space Research Organization, that is ISRO, situated in Bangalore, and this institute was established in 1969. The main aim of this institute was to develop the technology for making and launching of artificial satellites. Until now, they have been done successful researches, and there is a large number of satellite which has been made by ISRO, and they have also placed India at top. They have done many researches. There has been progress in space science, and ISRO has played a big role in national and social development.